the audience, you can do so. sellerroundtable.com/live. That's where you can be in the Zoom meeting, talk to us at the end, ask questions while we're recording, all that good fun stuff. So if you haven't done so yet, sellerroundtable.com/live, jump in there and you can ask your questions and hang out with us. We'll see you hopefully soon. All righty, here we go. I need to Steven Larson is a ClickFunnels guy. I don't know if you know who he is, Amy. He did like the 30-day challenge and stuff. He's actually local here. But I keep meaning to ask.
I'm pretty sure that you promised that you were gonna ask your new fancy Idaho friends to come on the show. So.
I know. I keep forgetting to, though. It's one of the many things on the list. But anyway, like I want to get him on and ask him how he gets so amped. Like whenever he does lives, he's just like so amped up. I'm just like, do you do like 5 energy drinks and like 300 push-ups? Like just go watch him. Steven Larson, if you guys don't know it, just do like Steven Larson ClickFunnels on YouTube and go look at some of it. He's a really smart guy too. But like, I always feel like after watching him, I feel like the guy on Ferris Bueller who's just like Bueller. I just feel boring. So I need to know his secrets.
I always get energized on live streams just because I like hanging out, and being around like-minded people. So I usually get full of energy on live streams and coaching calls and stuff. But I feel like you're full of energy too, Andy. You sing songs and
well, I try very hard, and some days are better than others. But yeah, for some reason today I'm definitely. Last night I wasn't feeling super hot, so like today I'm just kind of like off my game. So I gotta maybe
a double espresso before the live stream.
The caffeine. I gave up caffeine for like 5 years now. I'm back on it, and I've realized why I gave it up last time is it's just I actually have more energy when I don't rely on that crutch. So I'm gonna try to go back to that on the new year. That's gonna be one of my. I think I'm gonna do like a full 30-day challenge and invite people in to like join me on. Like it's gonna be a variety of things like no drinking, working out every day, no caffeine. Like, I'm going to try to go hard on the new year and not just do like one thing. One thing's easy, or at least I think, one thing's fairly easy. I want to try to do like a bunch.
I'm in.
All right. Yeah.
That's like, let's do it.
All right.
Are we
okay? So I'm going to record
button.
Yep. And then Amy, do you want to start out? And then I'll do the quick background question, but then go from there so that I can, share all the stuff around. And LinkedIn, you have to manually share it to the groups, which is really irritating. So, alrighty, here we go. Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Andy Arnott with
Amy Weiss.
And we're super excited to have Ben Leonard back on. Ben, thank you so much for being here.
Hey, good to be here. Thanks for having me.
I almost re-butchered it. I'm so used to that last name being my friend from college. I had to really, really think about that one.
It's cool. You can call me whatever you like. I've been called a lot of bad things, so I mean,
no, I don't want to do that. We'll stay with the niceties. Ben, on that note, I would love if people haven't watched the episode that you were on previously, you guys should go back and listen to that. But if you have not, Ben, give us a quick little synopsis of kind of your journey to where you are today.
Cool. I'll try and keep it brief. My background is science. I'm an environmental nerd. Studied ecology, was working as an environmental scientist when I started my first e-commerce brand back in 2016. And it was a fitness brand. It turned out I was pretty good at it. So I quit my job and I scaled that brand up. And by late 2019, we were doing about $6 million a year in sales, and I sold it. This was right before the explosion in mergers and acquisitions that we're now seeing in e-commerce. And I sold it through a broker, and the experience with that broker could have been a bit better. So at the end of that, my accountant and I put our brains together and decided to combine our skill sets, me on the e-commerce side and Allison on the mergers and acquisitions and the accountancy side. We created a better brokerage. And now I'm kind of doing 3 things. I'm doing a bit of consulting, helping big brands to be a bit more like the little guys, because it's us that's crushing it in e-commerce and not them. I got the brokerage, helping e-commerce business owners plan and then execute their exit strategy. And I'm still building brands, partly because I love it, partly because now I know how to build a brand into something valuable that I can sell, and partly because I still need to have my feet in the trenches, as it were, so that I can properly advise people, because of course this space is moving so fast. And that's a really quick rundown on me and how I got to what I'm doing now.
Awesome. And how did you learn about Amazon? Like, how did you first learn about it?
Yeah, so I came at it a bit different than a lot of people. For me, it was never about, oh, I need to sell stuff on Amazon. It was, oh, I'm starting a brand of fitness equipment. I need somewhere to sell it. I was one of those people that thought that when you bought something on Amazon, you were buying it from Jeff Bezos. Like, I didn't know that third-party selling was a thing. I just knew that I was developing these fitness products and I would probably want to sell them on my website. And I might want to sell them somewhere else like eBay or something. And then I discovered, oh, you can sell on Amazon. So for me, it was just a sales channel. And that's how I got into it. And that was the approach I took.
I think that's so smart. And whenever I see people that are building a brand first and brand focus and customer focus first, they always do really well on Amazon, because they're not dependent on Amazon for all of their traffic and sales. They're just looking at Amazon as a very strong sales channel, and they're doing all the rest of the customer follow-up, customer market research, all of that kind of stuff very well. So I think that it's always nice to hear that. Not everybody who builds a brand first does well on Amazon, because
Correct.
sometimes they don't understand e-commerce. But I think today you have to understand e-commerce,
I think so.
to really, to grow faster. So speaking of that, though, you started this brand of fitness equipment by the way, that sounds like hard, like oversized, like heavy, what was the hardest part about growing and scaling that business?
A few things, I guess. It was quite competitive. So it was important to stand out from the crowd. And I did that through brand identity and building direct relationships with customers off of Amazon through social channels. I ran into a few intellectual property issues, which we can touch on if you want. One of the biggest challenges was just the status quo of the fitness industry. Like, it's all about being the biggest, the strongest, the fastest, the slimmest, the most muscly, the skinniest. And so I actually used that to my advantage. I kind of zigged where everyone else zagged. So I made the kind of somewhat unorthodox decision to make myself an averagely fit, normal guy the face of the brand. And so the whole idea was, if you're an averagely fit, normal person, provided you set some goals and you're working hard to get after them, you're a beast. Welcome to our tribe. The brand was called Beast Gear. Welcome to our tribe. At the same time, if you're really unfit and you're just trying to get off the couch and run your first 5K, you're a beast. Welcome to our tribe. And if you're going to be the next heavyweight boxing champion of the world, you're also a beast. Welcome to our tribe. It was like, everyone is welcome. Fitness kit, high quality fitness kit at a fair price is for everyone. And we're kind of going against the elitist image of the fitness industry. Come along. And it worked, because people buy from people, not brands. Like, until you're Tesla or Nike, no one cares about your brand. They just want to solve the problem. So eventually people did care about my brand, but only after they'd bought 2 or 3 products and they became like a big fan. So until that point, I just had to kind of present myself as, hey, I'm Ben. I'm the guy that started Beast Gear. I'm a normal guy like you. Come buy my stuff. And it worked.
Mm-hmm. I love that technique. And I love how you brought up that people buy from people. They buy to have their problem solved. They don't care about your brand in the beginning. That doesn't mean that your brand messaging and what you're communicating doesn't matter, as you proved with making sure that you actually had a brand persona and you were connecting with the customer, which is really important and awesome. What, in terms of choosing those winning products, you talked a little bit about how you had some intellectual property issues. And I think all of us, if you have not had some intellectual property issue, you have probably not been a brand owner or in e-commerce for very long. But yeah, how did you pick winning products? Was it more important to pick the winning products or to build the brand? Was it a balance? Talk to us about that.
So I'll tell you what I didn't do first. Because, again, when I started this, and even when I had my first idea of what the first product was going to be, I wasn't coming it from an Amazon point of view. So I hadn't played around with, this was 2016, right? I don't think Helium 10 existed yet, but Jungle Scout did. I hadn't played around with Jungle Scout. I wasn't trying to figure out what the search volume on certain keywords was and what should I sell. It was about, oh, I'm going to build a brand of this. I'm interested in this. This makes sense. I'll go and do that. And for me, then it was just about scratching my own itch. So I was looking through my fitness kit in my gym bag, and I did a lot of boxing and CrossFit at the time, and my jump rope wasn't very good. So I decided to make a better one. So I developed a better one. And the first product for the brand Beast Gear was called the Beast Rope. Eventually, I brought out three jump ropes. And so for me, it was about, well, what problems do I have and how do I solve them? And then it was about creating products which solve related problems for the same group of people. It was never about gaming the algorithm or finding some opportunity through Amazon in that way. I'm not saying you can do that. You absolutely can do that and then build a brand around that. But it really helps if you're passionate about whatever it is that you find. So for me, that's how that worked. I just created more products that made sense for my customers to solve related problems for them, always trying to either be as good as or better than the competitor products that were already available.
Yeah. And in terms of your marketing strategy, when you're building that brand out, I love how you mentioned, you picked yourself as the persona and you said, hey, I'm just a normal guy and I'm solving my own problems and these are your problems too, come along and be part of our tribe. How much of growing your brand had to do with what you were doing off of Amazon?
A huge amount. So I think more and more brands and even Amazon themselves now are paying attention to the off Amazon part of the equation. But I think I was pretty early to do that. So for example, a lot of this is like straight out of like the Gary Vaynerchuk playbook, and love him or hate him, he's got some pretty cool ideas. And it's doing stuff that on the face of it, you think doesn't scale. But when it starts to work, you eventually find a way to make it scale. So let me give you an example, right? And it really helps if you have a brand that lends itself well to social media, either because it's photogenic or people like to talk about it. And fitness is a good example of that. But other brands work. Like you could have like a knitting brand that would work really well on like Pinterest or Instagram. So, let me paint you a picture. Dave buys my new weightlifting belt and he posts a photograph of himself on Instagram using the hashtag for the brand, and he tags the brand. And in the beginning, it was me doing all this, but eventually it was a team. Search the hashtags and search for check who's tagged us. Not only would we comment on their post with a meaningful comment, not some generic rubbish, but actually something relevant to what they posted about, we would click on their profile and spend a minute scanning back through their last several posts and learning a little bit about them, and then have a conversation with them in the DMs. So it's, oh, hey, Dave, great job with your squat personal best the other day. And I saw your post from a few weeks ago where you absolutely nailed your deadlift. Great job. I see you're from, I don't know, Edinburgh. It's my favorite city in the UK. And then you just build a conversation with them, right? And you're building a relationship. Dave is delighted because you've paid him attention. That's why he's on Instagram. People are on Instagram for attention. And whether they admit that or not, that's why they're there. And so you've paid him attention. He's blown away because the brand that he just bought from is DMing him. You don't get that with Nike. And then you just throw it out there. Well, because you're awesome, here's 10, 15% off on our website. So now you've moved him over to your website. So Amazon's top of funnel, you've moved him to your website. He might or might not buy from you, but you've got a good chance of at least getting his email address from a lead magnet. So now you can market to him through email. And you can then just ask him a simple question. At this point, you've built up so much goodwill, right? He's delighted purely because you've paid him attention and you've shown interest in his life. By the way, where did you buy the weightlifting belt? And you know what the answer is going to be. Oh, well, I got it on Amazon. You wouldn't mind just heading back over to your account and just leaving us a quick review, would you? And then you get the review. And then here's a great bit. So he's bought a weightlifting belt from you. So what I would do is I would save all my customers' posts in different collections. So that post would go in a collection called like UK customers weightlifting. So then 2 months later, I'm launching another weightlifting product. Back to that collection, back to every person who's posted, back into the DMs, catch up conversation. How you doing? What's been going on? How's your life? How's your training? Anything I can help you with? Keep it cool, keep it natural, show interest, empathy. By the way, we're launching a new product. And then you can see where we're going from here. So then you can launch new products to an audience who cares about you. And this is how you build raving fans. And people will be listening to
micro influencers and brand ambassadors.
Yeah. So you get your user generated content. We would never have to pay for any content. You get your reviews, which are all verified and real. They're completely within terms of service. You're not saying, hey, if you leave
you didn't give him a free product.
Yeah, nothing like that.
Reached out to him.
It just so happens that unhappy people tend not to post on Instagram. Mm-hmm. But it's not against terms of service. So that is how you do it. And then they become raving fans and they tell their friends.
Yeah.
And so on and so forth. So to answer your question, yes, it played a huge part. And we would do that in every country, right? We were selling in UK, France, Germany, Italy, Spain. And I used really not Google Translate, a translating tool called DeepL, deepl.com, I think it is. Check it out. It's really good, to actually put together scripts and even just, on the fly, just put in whatever they're typing at me into DeepL and translate it and write back in their native language. And it really, really, really worked to build those relationships. And after a while, it became unsustainable for me to do it myself. So I built out the scripts and I handed them over to a team. And they did it.
I love that. I love that from the very beginning, you started with the intention of connecting and following up with your customers, which is brand 101. Yep. That's awesome.
I'm killing my mic there. I couldn't have done that if I'd found some random thing on Amazon to sell. And even if I'd then tried to build a brand around that, let's say I found like some, I don't know, plumbing component, and I built some plumbing brand, I have not the smallest interest in plumbing. So even if I'd built a brand around it, I wouldn't have got out of bed in the morning excited to go talk to people in the DMs about plumbing, right? It has to be something that you're passionate about, or at least someone in your organization needs to be.
And I mean, you can sell plumbing parts,
but not as much.
And you can sell plumbing parts on Amazon all you want, and you might even find a really underserved niche and you might make some good money, but it's going to be really hard for you to build a brand around that, especially if you don't know anything about it and actually make it a sellable brand. So that being said, you talked about all this. It's just so interesting to me because this is one of the biggest pain points that I notice when people come to me and ask me about, hey, I can't get this thing to sell. And it's like, well, that's because you're one of 400 other ones. Like, why should the customer buy this? Right. What's your vision? What are you doing with this brand? And people just feel stuck. And I think it's because they start with this model where they pick a product that they think is, low competition, high demand, and then everybody else does the same thing. And, we end up in this lovely, chasing tails thing. So speaking of that, I mean, and Amazon has changed a lot. That actually used to work a while ago, that was like, you could sell, man, but people are still teaching that. And it's just not as effective anymore. It's definitely not effective for selling. So that being said, Ben, what do you recommend for people? You're still building brands today. What do you recommend for people who are getting started? They're listening to the story. They're listening to this Amazon opportunity. And what do you recommend for them? What should they be doing?
The first question to ask yourself is not what to sell. It's who to sell to. And ideally, you want to scratch your own itch. And all the best brands start from somebody scratching their own itch. For example, Airbnb was, okay, it's not physical products, but it's a big brand.
Yeah.
Was started by some people who were broke and they inflated some airbeds in their spare room and rented it out, right? And so they created a platform for people to rent out their spare rooms, and it's grown from there. Shopify was started by Tobias Lutke, who needed a platform, a website to sell his snowboards. And in the process of building it, discovered that actually he was scratching an itch there to build a platform for people to sell products on their own D2C website. You get the idea, right? So it needs to be something that you identify with and you are passionate about. and you want to build a brand, which to me, a brand is a suite of products, and you don't need to end up having a lot of products, right? If you end up with 5 SKUs, that's absolutely fine. I would say a sweet spot is between 5 and 25. A suite of related products that solve related problems for a particular group of people, whether that's motorcycle fans or people who like crochet, whatever, and make it something you're interested in. Start with that is what I would do. And then it's the classic stuff, identify what's your first product going to be that's going to get people hooked, and ensure that there's something about it that differentiates it from the crowd. Now, that might be difficult at first, might be difficult to either improve upon the competition or create something novel, but as a minimum, you have to then make it all about brand and make your brand stand out, and potentially take a slightly different view on it. So go niche, to target a particular niche group within that group of people, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely.
That's where I would start.
I think that's really great advice. And, people can get very overwhelmed because they see this opportunity and they go, oh, okay, I want to leave my job and I want to go after this opportunity. But then they get stuck in this kind of loop where they're like, I don't know what to sell. And they don't feel confident enough in scratching their own itch. And, so then they're just like, no, I'm just going to sell this other thing because it looks like it has good numbers. Right. But then it's really hard to grow something that you're not interested in. Right. Because you're like, okay, where do I go from here? So I think just starting there and not being afraid to just start small and grow from there is just such great advice.
I think at the start, a lot of people, because of a lot of the topics in the blogs, YouTube, podcasts, is people coming on to talk about what's the latest tactic or hack or shiny object for doing ABC, that newbies hear that and they're like, oh, I need to be doing that. And then the next step is, oh, I need to be doing that as well. And that, and that, and that, and that. And they get pulled 1 inch in a million directions rather than just thinking strategically. Forget all that stuff. Forget about the latest hack to rank on Amazon. You don't have an Amazon business. Only Jeff Bezos does. And think about the wider strategy, right? What's my first product? What would a suite of 4 products right now for this particular group of people look like? Write that down and then ask yourself, okay, who are these people? What are their values? What are their challenges? What are their pain points? What do they need? What would their objections to buying from me be? And how do I bust those? And where do they hang out? And then get in front of them. Like, are they on Pinterest? Great, go there. If they're not on Pinterest, then don't go on Pinterest. Are they on YouTube? Are they on Instagram? Are they on TikTok? Are they in Facebook groups? Wherever they are, get in front of them and start building the audience now before you even launch. There's a great book on that topic, actually. I wish I'd written it. It's called 12 Months to $1 Million by Ryan Daniel Moran. It's a great book because it's quite straightforward and simple and strategic without getting too caught up in the weeds. So I would recommend everyone reads that.
All right. 12 Months to $1 Million by Ryan Moran. Awesome. Yeah. Okay. So you sold your business.
I did.
What made you decide that it was the right time to sell?
Well, so it was early 2019 when I made the decision. So a completely different landscape to now, right? I'd heard a few whispers, within the e-commerce community that there was some money coming into the space to acquire e-commerce brands, and that buying and selling e-commerce businesses was going to become more mainstream. Previously, if somebody had said they wanted to buy an e-commerce business or sell an e-commerce business, you would have got looked at like you had 2 heads. People believed that an e-commerce business wasn't a real grown-up business because it didn't have a roof and a door and walls. And I came to realize that I was sitting on a pretty valuable asset. My wife was pregnant. We wanted to move house. And the business was at a turning point where either I build a bigger team, either remotely or locally, and got a bunch more resources to take it where it could go, or I could take some legacy money off the table and do something different and give us a bit more security for life. And I decided that the right thing for our family at that point, what we collectively decided, was to sell. And perhaps if I'd already had an exit under my belt and already had that kind of safety net financially, I would have potentially stayed along for the ride because I loved the brand, still do love the brand, but it was the right time for us. And there's kind of a qualitative way of looking at this, a quantitative way of looking at it, and a really wishy-washy emotional way of looking at it. And I received some wishy-washy emotional advice whilst I was thinking about this. It was actually really, really helpful. And the advice was this. It was sell your business at the point of peak romance. And what that means is you've built up a whole bunch of potential stored energy in your business as to where it might go. It's got a lot of potential. But that's only potential. It might not be achieved. It might not be realized. If you get out now, you're in a really great spot because you have a lot of potential, which you can use as leverage to negotiate a great deal. And you could potentially, in addition, capitalize on the upside if you can structure the deal right as well after you've sold. But if after you've sold, it doesn't quite reach the potential that you think it has, then you got out at the right time, which is a pretty interesting way of looking at it. I also felt like it was the right time to sell just because I was growing, but I hadn't maxed out growth. So there was still some meat on the bone to attract a potential buyer. And I think that's something that everyone should take account of. You want to sell your business when you're on an upward trajectory, you've got growth history, but you haven't maxed out growth, because whoever buys your business wants to enjoy some of that growth too and accelerate it. And then if they're a financial buyer, they're going to want to exit themselves a little bit further down the line.
Yeah, absolutely. I love some of the points you made there. One of the things I really like that you mentioned is, if you wanted to, if because a lot of people see their businesses like their babies, right? They have this emotional kind of attachment to their business, right? Almost like a child. And I love the fact that you mentioned that, if you structure the deal right, if you still want to be involved, you can take, some money off the table in terms of, percentage of ownership, and still stick around if if you believe in the company or you want to continue to grow the company, or like you did, take it all off the table and go on to the next thing and take what you've learned. And sometimes it's I do a lot of software, and sometimes it's better to just start over rather than try to rework code that you've done before, right? Because you have this knowledge of the journey now that you can take and kind of start from. It'd be like like being a contractor and building houses, right? If it's the first house you ever built, it's not going to be nearly as good as the 10th or 15th house you're going to build, right? Because you're going to have that experience and those tips and those tricks and those all those different ways of doing things that are going to evolve and get better. So to take that first house and maybe try to remodel it, you might not get that perfect house, that dream house that you really can envision, unless you start from the foundation and work your way up.
Yeah,
So
you hit on a great point there, actually, which is a lot of people are asking now, they're saying, hold on a second, with all these aggregators in the space buying brands and all the resources they have, aren't they just going to start their own brands and outcompete me, and I'm not going to be able to compete? And the answer to that is no, because most of these aggregators know diddly squat about e-commerce. They know how to raise money, but their operational capability is pretty poor, if we're being frank. And many of them won't exist in the next 9 to 18 months anyway. And their expertise lies in taking what you have already built and sticking some big resources behind it. They are a cruise ship. Cruise ships are great. They have tons of entertainment on board. You can eat as much as you want, and they take you to interesting places. But they take half a day to turn around, and you can't just change the itinerary when you want. But when you're on a speedboat, you can choose, I'm going to go swim with dolphins. I'm going to go shark fishing. I'm going to go scuba diving. And you can still end up in the same destination at the end of the day as a cruise ship, and probably faster. So you can exit your brand, and then with the resources that you've got, buy yourself a new speedboat and still beat the cruise ship. And then sell again and again and again. And that's kind of the model that I'm following, and I would encourage others to follow. And you know what you mentioned before as well about deal structure. I mean, that highlights why it's really important to work with not only a great broker, but a broker who will partner you with a really good mergers and acquisitions attorney to help structure the deal such that it protects you from the potentially poor operational capability of whoever buys it, but also whatever in a way that suits you. So if you want a bit of an earnout because you can see where this could go, then great. If you want a consultancy agreement so you can help advise on the running of the thing, great. If you want to take a profit split of new products that you launch after you've sold the business, because you've still got a big list of products that you could launch, great. If you want to retain some equity, great. But you got to have the right representation to help you do that.
Absolutely. I love that. So, when somebody's thinking about selling their business, how would they be able to figure out kind of what they might be able to get in terms of offers from people wanting to buy them out?
Sure. So I guess this comes down to a couple of things. It comes down to how we value a business, but also what makes a business valuable. So maybe we should start with what makes your business valuable. So as I alluded to in the first part of the conversation, you really need to have a defensible brand. You can't just be selling stuff. A defensible brand with some sort of IP. So you need to have trademarks, ideally, not only in the territories that you're selling in, but also where you're manufacturing. And if you can get some additional intellectual property like a patent or a design registration, perhaps on a product that you've designed, then even better. I mentioned before that you want to be growing, but not maxed out. So there still needs to be some fruit on the tree for the potential buyer to pick. So that could be growth where you're selling now, but it could be the opportunity for them to take the brand internationally, for example. The business needs to be stable. So what I mean by that is not risky. So not selling in a gray area and not using any black hat strategies. Needs to be transferable. You need to be able to hand over the keys. So a great test of that is the hospital test. If you fall down the stairs tomorrow and break both your legs and end up in hospital for a long time, will your business run without you? If the answer is yes, then you have a pretty transferable business. That's great. If it's not, that's okay. You just need to do some work to build out some systems and processes and probably some automation. And documentation. Have you got everything neat and tidy, all the T's dotted and I's crossed? No, I's dotted and T's crossed. With regards to accounts, IP, systems and processes, tax filing, all the stuff that you would expect from, commercially, financially, and legally for your business needs to be in order. And then, on the face of it, then more with product and market wise, you want to have diversification. You can't have all your eggs in one basket because a buyer is just going to look at that basket and say, well, that's a bit risky. So you can't just rely on one or two products. You can't just rely on one sales channel. And you can't rely on one source of traffic. So for instance, if you're selling on your own website and all your traffic's coming from a Facebook ads account, what if your Facebook ads account gets suspended? Then you're in a pickle. So no one's going to want to buy it. And then the next part of what you mentioned was about, really comes down to, I think, how we value a business. So we value a business based, usually, not always, but I'll try and keep this as broad as I can for a broad audience who will have many different businesses, usually based on the trailing 12-month performance. And we take that performance, which is usually measured either as something called seller's discretionary earnings, SDE, or something called EBITDA. Let's just talk about SDE for a minute. SDE is basically your net income plus add backs and adjustments. And add backs and adjustments are wonderful things that a good broker will do for you to maximize the value of your business. So we take your trailing 12-month performance and multiply it by a multiple. And the multiple, the moment at e-commerce, is ranging from anywhere from between about 2 to about 7. And there's outliers, can be higher than that. And that's how we land on the value of your business. So for somebody at home wanting to do a quick, dirty calculation, take your net profit, add back any of your discretionary earnings that wouldn't apply to a new owner, what you're paying yourself, your internet, your phone, travel, health insurance. Then think about any other costs you've had in the last 12 months, which a new owner wouldn't need to pay for. So maybe you paid for some trademarks. Well, it's done. It won't need to be done again. Photography, videography, it's done. It won't need to be done again. Maybe some consulting fees. Then think about some recurring costs which you might have, which a new owner probably wouldn't need to take on because they probably already have them. So software, that type of thing. Maybe legal fees, accounting fees. And then part of where the broker will really earn their money is they'll go in and do a deeper analysis to identify opportunities to maximize the business by adjusting things like your COGS based on situations that wouldn't apply for a new owner. Like, for instance, suppose you've recently negotiated a lower price on your product, but you only did it 2 months ago. Well, we could adjust so that that applies across the whole 12-month trailing period rather than just the last 2 months to maximize that sales discretionary earnings. So if you're sitting at home, take your net income, do those adjustments that I just said, and apply a conservative multiple. So let's say 3.5, right? Typically multiples at the moment are a bit higher than that, but let's just be conservative. And you've got a rough idea of what your business is worth, but really you need to have that sales discretionary earnings calculated by a professional who's an accountant and an M&A expert and understands e-commerce and understands the opportunities to find and squeeze out extra value by, for instance, adding back the right costs that can be added back and adjusting COGS where they can. And that's just scratching the surface. You know, when an accountant gets in there and does the work, they can really add 6 or 7 figures to the value of a business.
Yeah, I love that. That's great advice. Going back to kind of my example about building a house, when you were first starting out on this e-commerce journey, did you have any big like aha moments where you thought of, wow, if I knew this when I started out, it would have really changed the journey for me in terms of growing your business, just upping just getting to another level with your business in terms of, profit or vision or anything that really stood out?
Yeah, I did. It was this. When I first wanted to sell my products in mainland Europe, this is pre the UK leaving the European Union, which was a pretty dumbass thing that we did recently. I needed to register for VAT in France, Germany, Italy, Spain, Poland, and the Czech Republic. And it was a real pain in the ass to do. And I nearly didn't do it. But I had to jump through a whole bunch of hoops to do it. I even had to, this is hilarious, to register for VAT in Spain. Not only did I have to have a whole bunch of documents translated, but only by particular translators on their special list of translators. I had to have the document notarized, whatever that means, by somebody called a notary. And when they do it, this is great. They take a piece of wax and they melt it, and then they stamp it like a medieval wax seal that they used to use to seal envelopes. They actually do that. It was like something out of the Dark Ages. So I had to jump through all these bureaucratic hoops to register for VAT in all these countries so that I could sell across Europe. And most of my competitors couldn't be bothered to do it because it was too much effort. So when I jumped through all the hoops and did it, I practically doubled my sales overnight. I felt like I was like a hunter-gatherer who just like bothered to climb this ridge into the neighboring valley. And I emerged into this lush valley of resources. And I was leading my tribe there. And so the aha moment for me was jump through the hoops. Like when you see an obstacle coming up in the road, the easy thing to do is either find another path or just give up and go home. And I'm not saying that you want to make your life difficult. You want to have a look through the hoop and check what's on the other side. The hoop needs to be see-through, right? Imagine you're Sonic the Hedgehog. But if the reward on the other side looks good enough, go to the effort of doing it. And so I kind of applied that across the board then for the rest of the business. So like, for instance, I got into Australia when they opened that up. I got into the Middle East when they opened that up. I went to the effort of designing my own products and having them patented. And I jumped through a lot of hoops and added value to the business because the potential buyer, when they were doing their due diligence, could see that this was building the moat around the business.
Absolutely. And I think some of one of the biggest things that I've learned for being in many different businesses for many different years is the people who take the effort to do the shit work, right? Like I always call it eating the shit sandwich, right? It's the people who no, it is though. It's like like one of that show. What is that? Dirty Jobs. I don't know if you've ever seen that show, but like some of the most well-paid jobs in the world are people who like clean like sewers out and stuff, or
Yeah.
do underwater welding, or it's a lot of jobs and things that other people just don't want to do, right? They're not either not
Yep.
glorious or they're tedious or some of the worst things working with an Amazon business is dealing with like stuff like that, right? Like I remember one Q4 where pretty much our entire catalog was hijacked, and this was back in like 2013, 2014, where they really didn't have seller support in place. They didn't really have anybody to help you. So in the first few weeks I was just losing my mind, right? I mean, it was one of those things where it's just you feel so powerless and so able to just not do anything. And then finally I realized, okay, well, I can either just do this or I can send an email every single day, morning and night, to seller support, to different, to email addresses I could find, to, just in other words, instead of giving up and throwing your hands up, like you said, the people who succeed are the ones who go through the work and go through the hassle of trudging through and really figuring out a way around the problem. Or if you can't figure out a right way around the problem, to take that energy and redirect it to something that, instead of, you know, sitting there just frustrated and not doing anything, I could have been like, okay, well, next year, what am I going to do differently to try to, make sure that this doesn't happen? Well, can I take that energy to maybe find new products? Can I write systems? Like what else can I do with my time and energy that will have a better outcome than me just, hitting against this brick wall over and over again? So,
Yeah, totally agree.
yeah, I absolutely love that. The other thing that I would love to hear, and I don't know if you've had this before, because I know that you kept your brand fairly small SKU wise and things like that. You're not one of those, sellers who was like trying to find opportunistic products. But did you have any failed products along the way? And what did that journey look like? In other words, how long did you keep that product alive? What do you think were the mistakes that you made in launching that product? We always talk about all the successes and all the tips and tricks and stuff, like you said, but I think that there's also a lot to learn in losing, right? When you lose, you really learn a lot. So any failed product launches or failed business efforts that you gleaned any value from, in terms of, okay, I'm not going to do it this way next time.
Yeah. So I was fortunate in that I didn't have any products that just kind of like flopped. And I think the reason for that is I was always very careful to make sure that I was creating another product that made sense in terms of my brand and in terms of what would work with regards to what my customers wanted. So I hadn't like seen an opportunity. Oh, there's an opportunity there on Amazon to sell something that would do that. Let's go and try that. And then it doesn't work. It wasn't quite like that. But I did have a product that didn't work out for a slightly different reason. And it was this. It was a liquid chalk product. So this is it is basically chalk suspended in an alcohol solution, which you rub on your hands, much like what we're all rubbing on our hands these days, alcohol, gel, because of the pandemic. And so the alcohol evaporates and you're left with chalk on your hands. So you get less mess in the gym. Great. Sourced a really great product, tested a whole bunch, and found a solution that was fantastic. And then Amazon wanted me to enroll it in the hazmat program. But none of my competitors were in the hazmat program. And then Amazon wouldn't let me join the hazmat program, and I couldn't figure out why. So I had this product that I had to merchant fulfill because they wanted it in the hazmat program, but they wouldn't let me in. But none of my competitors were required to be in it. And it didn't matter how many cases I opened saying, hey, these competitors need to be kicked off and you need to let me in the hazmat program. Nothing happened. And that was incredibly frustrating. And so that product never fulfilled its potential until by the time I sold the business. And in fact, I don't think the new owners are even selling it anymore. So that was really frustrating. And so I think the moral of the story there is that you got to remember that Amazon's just a sales channel. and you are beholden to what happens with them if you're putting all your eggs in one basket. So fortunately, I was also selling on my own website. And so sales of the liquid chalk on my own website were great. They weren't as great as what they would have been through Amazon, of course, because the vast majority of my sales were coming through Amazon. But I had gone to the effort to diversify my business and recognize that Amazon was just a sales channel. And you can't just assume that everything's going to, be tickety-boo and all work out selling through Amazon. You have to recognize that there will be bumps in the road, and some of those bumps, you're not actually going to find a new road. And I didn't for that particular product.
Yeah, that's a great example. There's so many, man, the hazmat, I would say that's the last few years, like one of the biggest issues that we even had that issue. And we're like all the, all the ingredients in this product were completely natural based, like, I mean, you'd get sick if you like chug the whole bottle, but it wouldn't kill you. Or, you know what I mean? It was like all natural stuff. And yeah, and we just kept getting wrapped under this stupid hazmat thing, and we'd submit the documentation. Like even their own documentation would say, hey, if it's X, Y, or Z, you don't need to be hazmat, but you have to file an exemption, which we did. And then their stupid AI bots would pick up on the product again and flag it, and we'd have to like go through it again and again. And then finally they're like, oh no, you need to be FDA approved. And so, yeah, we pretty much gave up on it at that point, because just like, there's some, I guess the moral to the story here is sometimes you do need to know when to pick your battles, right? I mean, sometimes if it's just completely out of your control, you might be better off to just, pick up and walk away and put that energy towards something else. So some great lessons there.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. This has just been so awesome so far. Like everything that you've brought to the table, Ben. I think it's great to hear. It's one thing to have somebody from an aggregator come on the show and talk about, what you need to do to sell your business, but it's another thing to have a seller who's been through what you've been through and who's built what you've built and who's now helped others do the same. It's a whole different perspective, because we can actually get in the weeds on some of these things and talk about what real pain points that we small business owners have to deal with when it's a little bit intimidating, thinking that giving ourselves permission to build a brand and become successful. It's hard sometimes. So it's great to have these kinds of conversations. Now, when it comes to selling your business and really getting the best offer that you can possibly get, what are some things people should be thinking about?
You got to take your business through the right process. So we're in kind of a new crazy situation with Amazon, e-commerce at the moment. I remember when we used to talk about e-commerce, and particularly Amazon being the Wild West. I think, like you said before, when you could kind of sell anything and it would work on Amazon, right? Back in the day. But we're in kind of a new Wild West now, because mergers and acquisitions in the e-commerce space is so young. So what's happening is a lot of people are getting very exciting emails land in their inbox from an aggregator saying, hey, we want to buy your business. And this is incredibly exciting, because you've put your blood, sweat, and tears into your business, and you spent last night banging your head off a brick wall in tears, trying to talk to someone to sell support because you got a problem, and now somebody wants to give you a decent amount of money for your brand. It's really exciting. And what's happening is the aggregators will dangle a carrot in front of you, and it's a pretty big carrot, and it's possibly more money than you ever imagined having. But in reality, your business isn't worth a carrot. It's worth a whole sack of carrots. If only you would do what we do in every other industry, which is take it through a process. There's no rush. There's no need to rush this. Have your business strategy mapped out and get help with it from experts. We use experts for our PPC. We use experts for our translations. We use experts for SEO. We use experts for trademarks. We use experts for photographs. And yet, when it comes to our most valuable asset, our business itself, people want to try and sell it themselves, which is just bonkers. So find out what your business is worth. Because even if you have no intention to sell it, you might as well find out what it's worth so you have a reference point. Otherwise, you're trekking through the jungle without a map or a compass. So find out what it's worth, and then ask yourself whether you would sell it for that, or whether you have a bit more work to do to get to where you want to be. And take it through a process to maximize its value through some of the things we discussed earlier with experts who have kind of lived experience on all sides. They're business owners, they're mergers and acquisitions experts, they're accountants who will work with you until you're ready to sell your business and not the other way around. And they need to be adding value to your business. Like whatever fee they're charging you needs to more than be paid for by the work that they've done to add value to your business. And then they need to be actively marketing your business to a pool of the right buyers so that you end up with a competitive environment of several buyers wanting to buy your business. That's really, the way to do it. Be wary of, if you get direct offers, that's fantastic. That's great. But then what you say to them is you say, that's great. Thanks so much for your offer. If you're the best option for me, then I'm sure you'll be the preferred option that my broker finds. Basically, that's kind of the way to do it. And that's kind of why we ended up existing, because we saw that the services that were available for sellers to plan and then execute their exit strategy were not good enough.
Yeah, cool. And then I guess the hard question is, how do I know when it's time to sell?
Yep. There's a few red flags, right? Have you lost your get up and go for the business, right? As Austin Powers would say, have you lost your mojo? Like, because if you have, that's fine, but you might no longer be the right person to take it forward. And there is a risk that the business will go into a decline because you've lost your mojo and you're not up for it anymore. And that's okay. Maybe the business has reached a point where it actually just needs others with more resources than you to take it forward. You might want to retire. We've just sold a business for a guy who bought a yacht and has gone to sail around the world. That is a perfectly fine reason to want to sell your business. Maybe, the most exciting part for me of building a business is kind of like from idea phase to just getting into orbit, right? And maybe you've been in orbit now for a few years and you're just kind of done and you have a new idea and you want to sell the business, get some capital for your new idea. Perfectly valid reason to sell your business. There's lots of good reasons to sell your business, but the key is to plan. Because what you can't do is wake up tomorrow and say, I want to sell my business, because you're going to have a whole bunch of work to do. But what you can do is wake up now and say, I want to have everything in place so that when I am ready to sell my business, my life is a lot less painful. And that means some of the things I spoke about earlier, having all your documentation in order, your accounts in order, your intellectual property, your SOPs, getting your business valued by an expert now, so that, because they might value your business for you and say, well, we believe that, currently this would sell for, I don't know, $500,000. And you might say, well, I don't want to sell it for less than $1 million. And what they can do, this is, for example, something that we do, is actually mentor you on a route to an exit, help you stack up the dominoes. These are the things you need to do to get to where you want to be. Keep a constant track on what your business is worth. And then when you're ready, and only when you're ready and not the other way around, pull the trigger and go to market. So if you plan ahead, your life becomes a lot easier later on and faster.
Yeah, I would agree. It's good stuff. Awesome. So we always ask this question before we wrap up. What are you listening to and reading to stay motivated?
Okay, a couple things. Right now, I am listening to an audiobook called Your Next 5 Moves by Patrick David, I think is his name. Your Next 5 Moves, pretty cool book. It's very, very motivational. That's the factual book. Fiction, I listen to pretty much on repeat most nights, Stephen Fry reading Harry Potter, and I am not ashamed.
Okay.
I love it.
I love it. And then Carmel had a question. She said, what is a reasonable horizon to plan for in terms of beginning to end for selling? So maybe she's asking about a timeline.
Yeah. It depends on where in the process we're talking about, because the timeline from, say, going to market to the deal being done can be very fast. it doesn't need to be. And there's definitely always we take an approach of more haste, less speed. Let's get this right rather than rushing a bit. Some in particular circumstances, it can be necessary to move fast. So if we're talking about going to market to the deal being done, you can be a matter of a few weeks if you're really pushing it, but more like a few months, okay, 2-3 months. And the reason for that, so you'll see a lot of claims from certain brokers and some of the aggregators, sell your business in 14 days or something absolutely, insane like that. And I just say to people, you've spent a long time building a fantastic business. Why on earth would you rush the most important part of it? If you take your time to actually properly analyze the business, a significant amount of value can be added. You can cast a wider net to find a pool of the right buyers, and then you can take the time to actually thrash out the right deal rather than just rushing to get a few bucks in your bank account. You can take a little bit longer and get a lot of bucks in your bank account.
Definitely. All right. And the last question before we wrap up is, how do people get in contact with you?
Sure. You can email me, ben@ecombrokers.co.uk. You can go to our website, which is ecombrokers.co.uk. We're in the UK. It's a UK domain, but we're working all over the world. I'm on LinkedIn. Just look me up, Ben Leonard. And my social handle is @BenLeonardPro for Instagram and Twitter.
Awesome. Thanks, Ben. Really appreciate you being on today.
Thanks for having me. That was fun.
Hey guys, and as usual, if you haven't done so yet, please rate, review, subscribe. Join us live Tuesdays, 1 p.m. Pacific time. We really love to have you guys. We had a decent crowd here today. Thank you guys who came in loud to ask questions. That always brings a ton of value to us, to our guests, to everybody else listening. So thank you guys who join us live. If you haven't done so yet, please do join us live. And with all of that, we are going to stop the live stream. We're going to stop the recording, and we're going to interact with just the people in the meeting. So that's a bonus if you guys join us live. So thank you so much, and we'll see you next time on the Seller Roundtable.